The moment I pressed post, I thought I was sharing something sweet. A birthday memory. My mother-in-law blowing out 60 candles, laughing at something my husband had said, the warm light catching the side of her face. I didn't think twice. She looked happy. We all looked happy. That was a Saturday in October. By Monday morning, my marriage was on fire. I need to back up, because the photograph was never really the beginning. It was just the match. The kindling had been laid for 3 years. My husband, I'll call him what I called him in the beginning, before everything, my person. We met at a mutual friend's wedding in Nashville. He was the kind of man who refilled your water glass without being asked and remembered 2 months later that you'd mentioned liking a specific kind of coffee. He was thoughtful in small, consistent ways that I had never experienced before. I fell in love with those small ways. I married them. What I didn't fully understand when I married him was that he came with a system. Not a family, exactly. A system. His mother. I'll call her my mother-in-law because that's what she was, even if it never felt like it had been the center of that system for 31 years. She had raised him alone after his father left when he was 4. She had worked double shifts at a hospital administrative office. She had put him through college on that salary and never let him forget it. Not in a cruel way at first, just in a way that meant he owed her something permanent, something that no wife was supposed to compete with. I understood this in theory. I even respected it. I didn't come from money either. I grew up in a small town in eastern Ohio, and my own mother had sacrificed things I still don't fully know about to give my brother and me a decent life. I knew what it looked like when a parent poured everything into a child. What I didn't know was what that child looked like when someone new came into the picture. The first 18 months of our marriage, we lived 40 minutes from her. That felt safe. Far enough that I had my own space, close enough that he could see her every few weeks without it being a production. She came to our apartment for dinner sometimes. She was polite, a little formal. She corrected the way I loaded the dishwasher once, standing in my kitchen, and then immediately smiled like it had been a joke. I laughed. I told myself I'd imagined the edge in it. Then his company relocated us to her city. We moved into a house that was technically in both our names but had been partially funded by a down payment she contributed, $5,500, which I was grateful for and which she mentioned, with precision, approximately once a month for the next 2 years. Not loudly, never loudly. Just, I remember when this kitchen didn't have the right lighting. Glad you were able to fix that with what we put in. That kind of thing. Soft and well-placed, like a thumbtack and a couch cushion. My husband heard none of it. That's the part that's hardest to explain to people who weren't there. He genuinely did not hear it. I would mention something she'd said, and he would look at me with this patient, slightly tired expression and say, "She's just trying to be involved, babe." And I would wonder if I was the problem. I wondered that a lot. I had a decent job. I worked in marketing for a regional healthcare company, remote mostly, which meant I was home when she stopped by. And she stopped by. Tuesday afternoons were her standing drop-in. I started scheduling calls and meetings on Tuesday afternoons just so I had something to point to. She started coming on Thursday instead. I started taking screenshots of things in March of that year. I'm not sure exactly what prompted it. Maybe it was the Tuesday when she rearranged our living room while I was on a work call and told my husband she'd done it as a gift. Maybe it was the week she brought us a casserole every single day for 11 days straight after he mentioned I'd been stressed at work. Not because she wanted to. Help me, but because she wanted to be in our house, and food was her entry point. Maybe it was just a slow accumulation of small things that my body understood before my mind was ready to name. I started a folder on my phone. I labeled it with a string of numbers that wouldn't mean anything to anyone else. I saved screenshots of texts. I kept a note, just dates and short descriptions. March 14, she told him my work schedule was putting pressure on the marriage. March 22nd, she asked him if we'd discussed kids yet, without asking me. April 7, she referred to the house as our home to her friend on the phone. I was standing right there. I didn't show him any of it. I wasn't ready for the tired look. The birthday party was his idea. His mother was turning 60, and he wanted to do something meaningful. I was genuinely glad to help. I spent 3 weeks organizing it, rented out the private room at her favorite Italian restaurant downtown, coordinated with his aunt and 2 cousins who flew in from Phoenix and Jacksonville, ordered a custom photo book with pictures going back to his childhood. I did not have to do any of that. I did it because I loved my husband, and I thought that if I showed up fully, completely, without reservation, maybe something would shift. The party was a Saturday evening. Everything went well, actually. She was moved by the photo book. She hugged her sister and cried a little, the good kind of crying. She thanked me, briefly, in the way she always thanked me, looking just slightly past my shoulder. At the end of the night, I took a photo on my phone. Her with the cake. 60 candles, all lit, the restaurant light golden and warm. She was mid-laugh. My husband was next to her, arm around her shoulders. It was genuinely a beautiful picture. I posted it Sunday morning with a short caption, something like, 60 looks good on her. Happy birthday to a woman who raised one of my favorite people. I thought it was kind. I had not asked permission. My phone rang at 9:47 a.m. I was still in pajamas, holding a mug of coffee, and I almost didn't pick up because I didn't recognize the number. But something made me answer. It was my mother-in-law. She did not say hello. She said, "Take it down." I set my coffee on the counter. "Good morning. Take what down?" "The photograph. Take it down immediately." I told her I didn't understand. It was a nice photo. She looked beautiful in it. I meant the caption as a compliment. She told me she did not give me permission to post her image on social media. She told me I had violated her privacy. She told me her coworkers followed me, which I hadn't known, and that I had made her look exposed. That was the word she used, exposed. I apologized. I said I hadn't realized it would be an issue. I told her I'd take it down. She said, "You should have asked first. That's basic respect, but you've never understood that." And then she hung up. I stood in my kitchen for a while. I took the post down. Then I sat at the table and opened the note on my phone and added the date and wrote. She called at 9:47, said I violated her privacy, said I've never understood basic respect. My husband texted me 20 minutes later. Mom called me. She's really upset. Can you call her and apologize? I texted back. I already apologized when she called me. I took the post down. He called. He said his mother felt the apology wasn't sincere. He said she needed to hear it again, properly. He said, and this is the part I still hear sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep, she's been through a lot, and she just needs to feel like you respect her. Is that really so hard? I said. She called me at 9:47 in the morning and told me I've never understood basic respect. I took the post down. I apologized. I don't know what else you want from me. He said, I want you to think about her feelings and not just yours. I hung up. Not angrily. Quietly. I just set the phone face down on the kitchen table and looked at the wall for a while. The next 3 days were cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. My husband came home, ate dinner, watched television, went to bed. We talked about logistics, whose turn it was to call the plumber about the slow drain, whether we needed to reorder the dog's medication. We did not talk about his mother or the photograph or the phone call. On Wednesday night, I told him I wanted to discuss what had happened. He said he didn't want to fight. I told him I didn't want to fight either. I just wanted to understand what he thought I had done wrong. He said, she felt ambushed. You posted something public without asking. I said, she ambushed me with a 9:47 phone call and told me I've never understood basic respect. He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, maybe if you had asked before posting, none of this would have happened. There it was, the pivot, the thing he always did, so smoothly I sometimes missed it. He'd acknowledge what she did for exactly one sentence, and then he'd spend the next 10 sentences on what I had done to cause it. I said, I want you to hear what you just said. You're not telling me she was wrong to speak to me that way. You're telling me I caused it. He said he didn't mean it like that. I said, then how did you mean it? He didn't answer. He picked up his phone and scrolled for a while. I went to bed at 9:30. His mother came to our house that Saturday. He had invited her, or she had invited herself. I genuinely wasn't sure which. I had not been told in advance. I came downstairs at 11 in the morning and she was sitting at our kitchen table with a mug I hadn't offered her, and she looked at me the way you look at something mildly inconvenient. He wasn't in the room. She said, I think we need to clear the air. I sat down. I was calm. I had promised myself I would be calm. She said she'd been feeling disrespected for a long time. Not just about the photo. For a long time. She said I had a habit of centering myself in spaces that weren't mine. She said the party I'd planned for her birthday had been, and this was the word she used, presumptuous. That she hadn't asked for a party. That I had made it into something it didn't need to be. I let her finish. Then I said, "You cried when you saw the photo book." She said, "I was being gracious." I looked at her. I looked at her for a long moment, and I said, "I think we have different definitions of respect." She said, "I think you've been trying to replace something you don't have, and you've been doing it in my son's house, with my son's money, and I think it's time to be honest about that." I stood up. I walked to the back door. I opened it and stood outside on the patio until my hands stopped shaking. When I came back in, he was in the kitchen. He had heard some of it. He was leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. He said, "She's not wrong that you've been tense with her for a while." I said, "She just told me I'm trying to replace something I don't have, in my own kitchen." He looked at the floor. Then he said, "I think you both need to try harder." Both. Both. I went upstairs. I sat on the edge of our bed, and something settled in me, not loudly, not dramatically, just settled. Like a thing that had been tilted for a long time, finally resting flat. I opened my phone. I went to the folder with the number string label. I read back through 3 years of dates and notes. And then I did something I had never done before. I forwarded the entire folder to my own email address, and then to my sister, and then I saved it to the cloud. Not because I had a plan, just because I wanted it somewhere safe. She sent the letter on a Tuesday. I came home from a coffee meeting with a colleague to find an envelope on our kitchen counter, not mailed, hand-delivered, which meant she had been in our house while I was gone. My husband had not mentioned she was coming. The letter was from an attorney. It stated that I had violated her right to publicity under our state's applicable statutes by posting her image in a commercial context without obtaining prior written consent. It referenced the fact that my social media account was linked to my professional profile, which she claimed made the post a commercial use. It demanded a written apology, a formal retraction posted publicly with equal or greater reach, and this part still makes my jaw tighten when I think about it. Financial compensation, the amount to be determined upon further discussion. I read it twice. Then I took a picture of it with my phone and saved it to the cloud folder. My husband came home at 6. I had the letter on the table. He read it. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "She probably just wants an apology. The legal framing is just, you know how she is. She's making a point." I said, "She wants financial compensation." He said, "I don't think she means that literally." I said, "She hired an attorney. The attorney put it in writing." He was quiet again. Then he said, "I think if you just called her, a real apology, I think this would all go away." I looked at him across the kitchen. The man who refilled water glasses without being asked. The man I had built 3 years of a life with. I said, "I need you to hear me right now. I need you to hear what I'm saying to you as your wife. Your mother sent a legal letter to our home, not to me, to our home. And your response is that I should call her and apologize." He said, "I don't know what else to do." I said, "I do." I went upstairs. I pulled out my laptop. I emailed my company's legal contact, a woman I had worked with on contracts before, and forwarded her the photo of the letter. I explained the situation clearly and asked for a referral to an employment or privacy attorney who could advise me. She responded within the hour. Then I called my sister. Then I made dinner because I was hungry and I sat and ate it alone. I did not leave that week. I want to be clear about that because I think there's an assumption that there's always a dramatic exit. There wasn't. I stayed in the house, I slept in our bed, I went to work, and came home and loaded the dishwasher and watched television. But something was different, and I think he felt it too, because he started being careful around me in a way he hadn't been before. Careful in the wrong direction. Not kind, exactly, just watchful. His mother texted me 9 times in 5 days. I read every one. I did not respond to any of them. On Friday evening, he said, "She's asking why you haven't responded to her." I said, "Because I have an attorney now, and she advised me not to." The look on his face, I want to describe it accurately because I've thought about it a lot since. It wasn't anger. It was something closer to alarm, like a system registering an unexpected variable. He said, "You got an attorney?" I said, Your mother sent me a legal letter. Yes. He sat down. He said, this is getting out of hand. I said, it got out of hand when she came into our home without telling me and then sent a letter demanding financial compensation because I posted a birthday photo. He said, you don't have to weaponize this. I said, I'm not weaponizing anything. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference, and I need you to think about which side of that line you're on. He didn't say anything. I said, I love you. I have loved being your wife. But I need you to understand that I have been keeping a record for 3 years because I never felt safe enough not to, and I need you to decide what that means to you. He said, a record of what? I went to my phone. I opened the folder. I handed it to him. He sat and read it for a long time. The kitchen was very quiet. At some point, the dog came and put his head on my knee, and I scratched behind his ears and watched my husband's face as he moved through 3 years of Tuesdays and Thursdays and casseroles and small, well-placed comments. When he finished, he didn't look angry. He looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. He said, why didn't you show me this? I said, because every time I brought something up, you found a way to make it about what I had done to cause it, and I stopped believing you were someone who could hear me. He didn't argue with that. The attorney consultation happened following week. My attorney reviewed the letter and told me, plainly, that the claim was extremely weak. My account was personal, not monetized, and the incidental link to my professional profile did not constitute commercial use under the relevant statutes. She said if it went anywhere, we would be in good shape. She also said, this feels less like a legal strategy and more like a pressure tactic. I said, yes. She helped me draft a response that was precise and clear and said, essentially, that I disagreed with the characterization that the post had been taken down as a courtesy, and that I considered the matter closed. It was not an apology. My mother-in-law did not respond. Her attorney sent one follow-up, which my attorney handled, and then it stopped. What happened with my husband is harder to describe because it didn't resolve the way the legal piece did. It didn't resolve cleanly at all. We went to therapy. His idea, which surprised me. The therapist was a woman in her 50s with reading glasses she took off and put back on a lot, and she was good at sitting with silence in a way that made the silence mean something. In the second session, she asked him to describe a moment when he had prioritized his mother's feelings over mine, and he was quiet for a long time, and then he said, probably most of them. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something closer to grief. He started seeing her separately for his own sessions. He started being, slowly in small ways, the person I had married again. Refilling the water glass, remembering small things. But trust is not a light switch, and we both knew it. His mother stopped coming on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I don't know exactly what was said between them, and I made myself not ask. What I know is that the house got quieter in a way that felt like breathing room instead of emptiness. We installed a new lock that spring. I kept the key on my own keyring. The folder on my phone is still there. I've thought about deleting it. I probably will someday, but not yet. Not until I'm sure I know who I'm living with. Not until I'm certain that when something happens, and something always happens, I'll be heard without needing the receipts. For now, I keep them. I keep them the way you keep a spare tire in the trunk. Not because you're planning to get a flat, but because you know the road and you know yourself. And you've learned that being prepared is not the same thing as expecting the worst. It's just knowing that you matter enough to protect. And I do. I finally, fully do. I've thought a lot about the 9:47 phone call. Not with anger anymore. That part faded. What I think about now is what it took for me to sit down at that kitchen table across from my mother-in-law without shaking. Not because I wasn't scared. I was. But because somewhere in the 3 years between the first misplaced comment and that Saturday morning, I had learned something I couldn't unlearn, that staying quiet is not the same as being safe, and that protecting yourself is not the same as being unkind. What she counted on, what people like her always count on, is that you won't keep track, that you'll absorb the small things and forget them, one by one, because each one alone seems too small to name. The rearranged furniture, the drop-ins. The way she said, our home, and smiled like she hadn't. She was right that I'd absorbed them. She was wrong that I'd forgotten. I wasn't born knowing how to do that. I had to learn it the hard way, through enough moments of bringing something up and being told I was imagining it, misremembering it, making it bigger than it was. That's what teaches you to document, not suspicion, exhaustion. You stop trusting your own memory when someone keeps telling you it's wrong, and so you start writing things down just to prove to yourself that you're not losing your mind. That's not strategy, that's survival. But here's what I've come to understand about the folder on my phone. It was never really about winning. It was about integrity. About being someone who tells the truth clearly, even when the truth is inconvenient. Even when the person you love most is the one who needs to hear it. When I handed my husband that phone, I wasn't trying to punish him. I was finally deciding that he deserved to know me accurately, and that I deserved to be known. That took something from me I didn't expect to find. Not cleverness, not legal preparation. Something quieter than that. A kind of steadiness that comes from having made a decision and sitting with it long enough to know it's right. My sister has it. I always admired it in her and thought it was something you were born with. I know now it's something you build, slowly, one Tuesday at a time. The legal letters stopped coming. The Thursday drop-ins stopped. The house got quieter in a way that felt earned rather than empty. My husband is trying. I see it in the small things, the same small things that made me fall in love with him, and I'm choosing, carefully, to let that count for something while I watch whether it holds. I kept the folder. I'll probably keep it for a while. Not because I'm planning for failure, but because I've learned that the most honest thing I can do for myself, and for anyone I love, is to stay clear-eyed. To not look away from what's actually happening in favor of what I wish were true. That's not cynicism. That's just what it looks like to take your own life seriously. The spare tire is still in the trunk. I hope I never need it. But I know how to change a tire now, and that knowledge doesn't make me less loving. It makes me someone worth loving back.